Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. First up, we're just outside of Kimberley at the wonderful conservation initiative of Kamfersdam. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to sit back, relax, and enjoy as the animals come down to quench their thirsts and cool off. Now, as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, send it on through. And we've got something exciting today as well, because we're heading up to World Water Day tomorrow on the 22nd. And with that, we've got the Education and Communications Manager of I Am Water, Catherine Wallace, joining us to chat everything water. Welcome aboard, and thanks for joining us today on this episode, Catherine.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Now, Catherine, would you like to tell us a little bit more about I Am Water, the inspiration behind the organization and its journey from 2010 till now?
Yeah, of course. So I Am Water is a Cape Town-based nonprofit. We're based in Muizenberg. We're very close to the sea, and we are all about ocean conservation. I Am Water was founded in 2010 based on the experiences of our founder, Hunley Prinsloo, who is an ex-competitive and record-holding freediver. She had the incredible opportunity to go all around the world and freedive in insane ocean spaces, interacting with things like sperm whales, humpback whales, huge pods of dolphins, and just really see the very best of the ocean. And each time she experienced the ocean, she came back to the thought that she wanted to share this love that she was developing with the ocean with South Africans. So she came back and started I Am Water. And the whole ethos behind I Am Water is to connect underserved and low-income communities to the ocean so that they can fall in love with it and want to protect it. And since 2010, we've only been growing. We've had some really incredible growth, especially in the last 5 years. And yeah, now we are I Am Water, and we're a registered nonprofit and a public benefit organization doing as much as possible, specifically in the False Bay area.
Well, wonderful. Thanks for that introduction, Catherine. And now that we've got that out the way, I think we'll go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So, Catherine, it hits quite hard home for me because I also live at the coast in Port Alfred, and I see a lot of the local communities that also don't really get access to the ocean. So it's really interesting what you guys are up to. And with that in mind, what are I Am Water's main projects?
Our main focus, our flagship program, is our Ocean Guardians workshops. And just like you were saying about those communities that don't have the same level of access to the ocean as they should have, that is what our Ocean Guardians workshops focus on. We work with grade 7 students over 2 days during the school week, and we take them to local beaches and just introduce them to the ocean in a safe, welcoming, and educational, but most importantly, really fun way. And we do this through snorkeling, through rock pool explorations, beach cleanups, and nature walks, and just a whole day of being immersed in that ecosystem and learning about it and getting to enjoy it. And that is our flagship. That's what we've been doing the longest. And yeah, it's very close to our hearts to be able to just consistently share ocean connection with young people. We have quite a few projects, so I can run through them all if you like.
You're welcome to. If we're going to go into an ad break or anything, I'll just let you know that we maybe just cut it short, and then we'll carry on afterwards. But please feel free, carry on.
Cool. Yeah, just jump in if you need to. Our next project is our River Guardians workshops, and this is a very similar version of our Ocean Guardians workshops, but was designed with the idea of highlighting the importance of looking after the entire water table, not just the ocean. In order to look after our planet, we need to be looking after all of our water sources. So these River Guardians workshops happen over one day, and they draw the connection between river health, ocean health, and human health, and how humans can really be instrumental in keeping all of those ecosystems in balance. And we use quite a few citizen science tools on those workshops. They're really, really fun. They're also a workshop that can be done inland. We don't need to be along the coast to share those workshops with the children. We also have our school speaking series, and this happens in the schools. So we'll send a group of our coaches out to schools in our local communities, and they will deliver different presentations, but always with the theme of ocean conservation and introducing young people to ocean stories and just starting to get them excited about the ocean and kind of planting that seed of maybe the ocean is an interesting and exciting place to think about. Then one of our newer programs and my personal favorite is our Inclusive Ocean Experiences. This program was designed alongside the St. Joseph's Home for Chronically Ill Children, and it is a specially adapted 2-day ocean workshop for children with physical and cognitive disabilities. And this is super important to I Am Water because we need so many people, we need everyone to be caring about the ocean and thinking about ways to support the sustainable use of the ocean. So including children with special needs is a really important step in making sure everyone is included in that conservation conversation. And then lastly, our scaling model is something called the Oceans for All Alliance. This is an initiative we piloted and launched with the idea that here in Cape Town, I Am Water is kind of at capacity. We're doing as much as we possibly can with the days in the year that we have. So we decided that through this Oceans for All Alliance, we could have similar organizations around the world come to us and learn how to implement our ocean connection methodology in their own context, and then go back to wherever they came from and start implementing these workshops, but in their own space with their own coaches and their own kids from different communities. And instead of setting up little satellite I Am Water offices throughout the world, we've got this initiative that helps people in their own contexts actually facilitate these workshops. And we have quite a few South African members. We've got the Wild Oceans Wild Trust up in KwaZulu-Natal is part of the Oceans for All Alliance. Then in the Western Cape, we have the Grootbos Foundation. And then excitingly, the Diski 99 is an organization in Gauteng, and they are our first landlocked Oceans for All Alliance member, and they are facilitating those River Guardians workshops. And we have one global member so far from Argentina, an organization called Patagonia Azul. And we're really excited about this initiative to just see how we can grow and have a footprint globally and see where we can spread even more ocean love.
So that is amazing, both inclusive and international. On that note, we're just going to go for a quick ad break and we'll continue after that. Now, just in the meantime, we've got a few comments coming through from Sandy Franklin, 69, who was just saying good morning to both Ralph and Catherine. Well, good morning straight back at you, Sandy Franklin. Lovely to have you on board. And Harriet Hodgen saying hello, Ralph and team from a sizzling Cape Town. Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty hot down there. We've at least got the wind that's keeping us cool here in Port Alfred. But I know that Cape Town heat when it hits. So good luck with that, Harriet. And Nadia asking, how does being by the water benefit young people with disabilities? And Catherine, you were just touching a little bit on that. But do you want to just shortly say anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of evidence that it is not only beneficial to their mental health, there's a lot of evidence based on that, but also as part of their therapeutic rehabilitation. We have a lot of kids that have quite severe burn wounds that they are healing from, and being in the cold water is really soothing on those wounds and those injuries as they heal, and also doing something different to what they do on their day-to-day. So snorkeling is an activity that they don't typically do, and it's really good for getting their muscles used to different types of activities and just integrating them back into communities and society after spending extended amounts of time in hospital. So there is physical and mental benefits to spending time at the beach and in the ocean. It's a really good question. Thank you.
I have to concur. I definitely think kids can really benefit across the board from being around water, both in it and just enjoying being around it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Even just looking at pictures of the ocean has been shown to boost our mood and just reduce anxiety. It's a really powerful tool in our mental health toolbox.
So as we watch here, both the lesser and greater flamingos obviously got a real affinity to water and using it as their sort of nesting and breeding zones, as well as feeding in it as well. So important for it to be clean for them, that they've both got their food source and their places to breed. Now, another question coming through, this one coming from Roger Ray, asking what positive changes you have noticed since working with I Am Water, Catherine?
So many. Gosh, I think I'll start with personal positive changes. For me, working at I Am Water is a really amazing way to use my marine biology degree. It's a way that I can not only help the ocean, but also spread the word that we need to be looking after the ocean. So very selfishly, I suppose, that's one huge benefit, but also just being able to give children a chance to experience the ocean has been something really powerful. And we have ongoing surveys with the children who come and participate on these workshops. We'll survey them before and then again afterwards. And often we also do 4 months after their experience as well. And so many of these surveys have been coming back with the kids saying that they would love to pursue a career in ocean conservation and possibly become a coach with I Am Water one day. And we're really seeing that the kids are having a mindset change from kind of thinking the ocean is okay and like, yeah, it's nice, it's out there, to really thinking that the ocean is something that they should be taking care of and want to look after. That's been the biggest positive change that I've seen since working here.
Most definitely. And I mean, it's also just changing the mindset of not always just exploiting the ocean for its resources, and just maintaining that it's always sustainable for the next generations. And I think that's really important too. Now, another question coming in, and always directed at you, Catherine. So here's one from Shiloh, and asking which area within South Africa needs the most help regarding the coral reefs?
I would say along the East Coast is definitely where we need the most support with regards to coral reefs, because based on the South African coastline, the East Coast is where we have the warmer water, and that is where coral thrives. Down here in the Western Cape, we have soft corals, but it's not quite the same as those beautiful coral reefs that we think of when we think of warm water. So up in the East Coast, there is quite extensive coral reefs, and luckily in South Africa, our coral reefs are not actually taking as much of a blow as coral reefs in places like the Philippines and even the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. those ecosystems are heavily scuba dived, and there's a lot of tourism going on. And tourism isn't something that we often think of as exploitation, but in those cases, it is often exploitation. And here in South Africa, we've got really good measures in place to make sure that tourism isn't having too big of an impact on our coral reefs. And yeah, we've got some really beautiful marine protected areas along the East Coast as well that are looking after our coral reefs. And I would say that in a global context, South Africa's coral reefs are actually in a really good state. And that's something that we should be proud of, I think, as a nation, that our coral reefs are being treated with respect and care.
Yep, I have to concur. And with the recent sort of things and happenings around the coast, and when there was ideas of going to be drilling and so on, and the communities just came together and fought that off. And I thought that was really commendable from the locals, especially along the east coast of South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an important thing to bring up as well. Having community engagement when these big things are proposed is so important. It's one thing to be upset and angry when things like that are proposed, but it's another to do something about it. And South Africans are very good at doing something about it when something doesn't sit well with us. And that's a good thing, I think.
Right, now speaking of the ocean, I think let's stick with that theme and let's change of place and head on down to Stony Point. Where we've got a lovely little bay with, I do believe, was there a little Dussie in on the left? I don't see any penguins for now, but who knows, maybe one will pop out of the water anytime soon. But Harley, who's 12 years old, is asking the question, why is it so important to celebrate World Water Day?
That is a very good question, Harley. And I think it is such an important day to celebrate because water is really what supports life on our planet. Without water, planet Earth would not be planet Earth. It would just be a rock with no life on it. And water is really what keeps us going. It's what makes our forests healthy. It's what we drink and what we survive on. And it's also just something that is always not necessarily in the back of our minds, but it is supporting our life. If that's through the water we drink, the veggies that we ate for dinner last night, everything needs water. And whilst it's this hero in the background keeping life on our planet going, we don't often think about it or consider it. And World Water Day is a really important time to just think about everything that water does in our day-to-day lives and be grateful for that. And I think also, just take some time to think how you could be using water more wisely, showing more gratitude to the water sources we have, whether that's through beach cleanups or river cleanups if you're not near a beach. World Water Day is just a chance to think about the ways that water helps us in our day-to-day lives and be a bit grateful and show some appreciation.
Yeah, as always, concurring there. I mean, water, making up pretty much most of our bodies as well. So if we're not getting clean water, well, we're going to be heading for problems. And this is obviously a problem around South Africa currently with a lot of crumbling infrastructure, etc. And so a lot of the sort of output that we have from urban areas going into rivers, filtering through into the oceans and coming back to bite us. So I think as far as we can, trying to keep our water, looking after it and keeping it fresh as well. And sorry for that. We just had a little bit of technical difficulties down at Stony Point. So we've shifted up on the place and we've headed to the Greater Kruger Park and Djuma, which seems to be having a little bit of rain. How apt. Now, the questions are flying in. So I'm going to try and get to everybody, but I I will try my best. Ants is asking, is there a problem with too many sharks and barracuda upsetting the balance of marine wildlife?
No, if anything, we need those big predators to help keep food webs in check. It's often the sharks and the barracudas and the typically considered more scary animals that are seen as the problem, but they actually are really key members of the food web. They make sure that each step below them doesn't grow too big or grow too small, and they kind of just take care of the ecosystem in that way. So when we have big overfishing going on, it's often those big predators that are being affected, whether it's directly or as a byproduct. Sometimes sharks are caught in nets that are catching other types of fish, and the fishermen will not put the sharks back in the ocean. And so they are being removed, and we are getting what's called big predator loss. And big predator loss is something that has really far-reaching effects. An example of that is here in False Bay. We had a thriving great white shark population until recently, when two orcas, port and starboard, moved in and started to target the great white sharks. The great white sharks have since packed their bags and left. They've gone along the south and east coast of South Africa. And we are seeing huge numbers of seals starting to get together, and that has effects on the penguins, on sardines, on everything below them. All the animals that they would eat and the animals that those animals would eat are affected just by the loss of the one big predator, our great white sharks. So we need those animals. I think we won't find ourselves in a position where we have too many sharks, because they are so often the side effect of overfishing.
Yeah, and I must agree with that. Definitely apex predators really keep the ecosystem balanced. I mean, if you look at the likes, even like, in these wilderness areas that we go to, if you had to take crocodiles out of a lot of these systems, being the apex predator within the fresh water itself, then you're going to have a massive increase in the population of catfish, who predate heavily on the tilapia, which is then going to upset that population of tilapia, where the apex predator, the crocodiles, would have kept the catfish numbers in check. And so there's a real knock-on effect, and you have this unbalancing effect. And we've often seen on social media, they speak of with the wolves in the different areas that they occur, being extinct in a lot of those areas, and a real unbalanced environment that has been created. And with the reintroduction of the wolves, you actually find more flourishing of other populations below them in the pyramid. So apex predators, seriously important within the different environments, both being on land and in freshwater, as well as in the oceans. So, like I said, a bit of a rainy day here at Djuma. I wonder if we're going to be lucky enough to see any predators coming down for a drink. That would just put the cherry on top of the cake. Right, so seemingly a bit drizzly, a little bit rainy here, Juma. Not much going on for now. I haven't even been able to see Dewey, and he's not talking to us either, the resident male hippo. So we'll wait for him to announce his presence. And in the meantime, I think let's head to Kenya and Old Donyo. With two big Maasai giraffe enjoying a lovely cool drink. Now, Catherine, another question coming in from Nikki this time, asking, how is river conservation different compared to ocean conservation?
I think in many ways they're very similar, being different ecosystems that are in many ways completely and absolutely linked. All rivers will eventually find their way into the ocean. So ocean conservation on a citizen level, not on a big industrial level, involves a lot of beach cleanups, a lot of advocacy. So just telling stories about the ocean and talking about ocean life and research and understanding marine ecosystems. Whereas river conservation is really very similar. We can do river cleanups, we can do research in river fish and river algae and the things that call rivers home, and really start to build an understanding of those ecosystems so that we can learn how to better protect them. So specifically at I Am Water, we do very similar things to conserve those two ecosystems. Our Ocean Guardians workshops focus on showing children the ocean in a new way, and that's through snorkeling, so that they can fall in love with it and want to protect it. And our River Guardians workshops involve a citizen science exercise where they do something called a mini SAS, which actually shows them the health of that specific section of the river. And both of these activities shed a new light on the ecosystem that they're in, whether that's through snorkeling or citizen science. It's showing them a different side to those spaces. And that's a different type of conservation. It's a people-first approach where you connect people to a space, and that has the knock-on effect of a mindset shift towards conservation. But I really think that some of the best ways to look after any ecosystem is to make sure that there's no plastic waste ends up in it, even if it's from a dump a few kilometers up the road and then the wind blows that plastic into that area. It's a really important and helpful thing to do to be able to clean up those areas. And that can be wherever you are, whether it's at a river, at the ocean, in a park, near your house, anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I grew up on the Klip River in the Vaal area of South Africa. And we used to arrange and organize river cleanups. We used to try and do it sort of every couple of months. It was both unclogging the river, but also cleaning up all the rubbish that comes down from upstream. And now that I live next to the coast, every time we go down to the beach, we always take a plastic bag with us. And we normally don't have enough space in the bags to, you know, put all the plastic waste that comes spewing out of the ocean, taken down by the rivers and into the sea, and then it obviously washes back out. So we just got to remember that this stuff, whatever we throw, sometimes even in the bins, you know, goes to landfill sites, most places across South Africa. So a lot of that, especially in windy areas, gets blown along, normally lands up in the water source, and that then obviously leads down to the next bigger river and sometimes also down into the ocean. But I think, you know, with us having that real vital resource and us polluting it, we're the biggest part of the problem. And if we can change something small every day, even if it's filling up one bag of plastic or whatever rubbish you can find next to a water source, well, it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Now, Catherine, I'd like to ask, what are your top 3 changes that you would encourage people to make to protect the ocean as well as the freshwater systems?
I think that's a really good question to ask, especially following on from talking about picking up rubbish and how things that end up in landfills can often end up being blown away by the wind back into our natural ecosystems. So one of the top 3 ways is by reducing, reusing, and recycling. And this is something that I think we've all heard before, but it's quite hard to form habits around reducing, reusing, and recycling. And that's where it comes in as something to really work on. So when you buy a plastic water bottle at the shop, really consciously think about refilling that and reusing it as many times as you can, and buying less things when maybe you've already got that plastic water bottle, you know you've got it at home, so don't buy another one. Reduce the amount of plastic you buy. And then by recycling, this is sometimes the easiest one because it just means putting something in the right bin. But again, it's making those actions into habits that is the challenge, and that takes a lot of conscious effort. Another way to really make a difference is to eat less fish when possible. It's not realistic to tell people to stop eating fish entirely because it's a really important part of a lot of people's diets. It's good, healthy protein, but to try to eat less fish when possible and try to eat sustainably caught fish if you are going to eat fish. And more sustainable fish are things that grow really fast, live out in the open ocean, and move around a lot and reproduce quickly. And that's things like yellowtail, sardines, anchovies. Smaller fish as well can be really sustainable. And a last way to really make a difference is to talk about things, to have conversations and debates and discussions with people around conservation, whether that's of freshwater sources or the ocean, to just really keep things top of mind and engage in those sometimes uncomfortable conversations with people who maybe disagree with you. It's such a key part of conservation, is to just spread awareness and be your own little community advocate for those ecosystems.
Yes, and I would say the same and agree, but I would add a caveat from my side in that I would encourage people to sort of shop locally. It not only encourages the local business enterprises, etc., but also then you can also see how these guys are fishing, etc. And it does sort of keep it away a little bit from these big corporations that have huge bycatches and sometimes claiming to be dolphin friendly, whatever it might be friendly. But the reality, as we've seen in a lot of documentaries exposing these, it's not always as they say. So if you can sort of source it locally from your local fishermen, I would say that that's probably better than buying from the big corporations at the supermarket.
100% agree. That's a really good point to add.
Now, there's a question here that I'd like to put to you because it's from Ollie, who's 7 years old, and he would like to know, which ocean creature would you compare to a giraffe? Catherine, you go first, and then I'll think of one in the meantime.
The first thing that comes to mind is something called an oarfish, like an oar that you would use to row a boat. An oarfish is a huge, long fish that lives in the deep sea. It can grow up to 10 meters long, so long like a giraffe's neck. And oarfishes are usually found in those deep, 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 deep parts of the ocean. But every once in a while, they find their ways to the surface of the ocean. And they look a little bit like aliens, but they're very interesting. And yeah, I think they've got that similar long body and kind of cool look about them. It's a really fun question, Ollie. Thank you.
And Ollie, I would have to say, I can't make up my mind. There's two. Obviously, a seahorse, because same thing, they're tiny little creatures, so not nearly as big as a giraffe, but they do look kind of similar in a lot of ways. And being very much endangered as well, a lot of the different species. But another one being a mola or a sunfish, which is one of the fish that you can get a chance of seeing if you ever get out to the UNESCO World Heritage Site at Walvis Bay Lagoon. And I was up there just recently and we spotted one, which was about 2 tons. But the reason I think of a giraffe as sort of being quite similar is that they're very shy, they're quite awkward, and they don't do things like an average animal would. And there's nothing average about a giraffe in the way that they have to drink, in the way that they look, in the way that they do things. So that's why I would say a mola mola or a sunfish as well as a seahorse. Those are the two species that come to mind. Ollie, great question. Thank you. Wow, how's this sighting turning out? These giraffe are just, they're in their numbers and they just seem to keep coming. Now, here's a nice question come from Marley and asking, what are your views on artificial reef structures?
I think that they have a really big and important role to play. Initially, when artificial reefs are created, it's by submerging something like a statue or sinking a ship specifically to create an artificial reef. And for a brief period, it kind of disrupts the ecosystem and throws things off a little bit, but eventually it starts to become incorporated into that ecosystem and becomes a really healthy part of the reef. It can really contribute to allowing marine life to thrive in a certain area, especially for things like coral and small local reef fish that like to live in one place their whole life. To have a new home can be really helpful in their numbers growing. And I also think that they look really cool, which is nice for tourism. When it's sustainable tourism, they can really contribute to people learning more about the ocean and gaining a bit more of an appreciation about the ocean. So I think they definitely have a place in the conservation realm as a whole.
Yeah, and I've seen that firsthand as well up the Namibian coast, where there's fishing boats and all sorts of different flotsam and jetsam that have been shipwrecked, and then they sort of, when they can't move them, they'll leave them there, and within a couple of years, it's literally teeming with wildlife. The cormorants and the gannets and everything else use it as nesting sites. And the fish around them, as you know, I know by first-hand experience as well, having paddled up to them on a surfboard many times, there's so many fish around them as well. So, and the crustaceans, everything attach themselves onto it. So eventually becomes a real little wildlife hotspot. Now, Fiona was asking, how can one build a stronger relationship with the ocean and water?
That is very close to I Am Water's heart, is that question. And that is all about, I would say, experiencing the ocean and immersing yourself if possible. Of course, that's not always possible for people. Maybe you don't live near the ocean. Maybe you can't physically get in. But I would say, when possible, just being in the ocean and being near the ocean is such a powerful way of connecting to it, because it's such a all-encompassing feeling when you are submerged in the ocean, and specifically snorkeling, because then you are really in a whole nother world. Your eyes are open underwater and you are seeing this thriving ecosystem. Ways to build a connection with the ocean when you aren't necessarily close to the ocean or can't get in. Reading articles, watching live streams like this where you can learn more about the ocean, watching documentaries, just really start to get the ocean into your sphere of influence, whether that's through the media you consume, the activities you choose to do, or the things you talk about. So maybe start having discussions that are more focused around the ocean, and just bring the ocean into your day-to-day life, whether that's through your actions, your thoughts, or what you talk about.
And I'll second that. Having lived near to the ocean, when you can hear the sound of the ocean when you go to sleep, it's something that will stay with you for the rest of your life, and you'll always long to be able to do that if you leave that place. So, yes, and with that being said, the giraffe now seem to be concerned with something, and they've moved off. So I think we'll do the same. Let's go back to the Greater Kruger Park, but this time to Cat Eye. With a nice close view of a couple of elephants. I'm hoping it's a little breeding herd. We'll have to wait and see. But a question coming in from Wesley asking, what is green economy? Now, I'm not sure if you meant blue economy or green economy, but maybe I'm just not getting the question correctly. Maybe you can answer it, Catherine?
I think green economy and blue economy are different words for the same thing. It is using money and spending habits and earning habits to help support conservation. And specifically at I Am Water, the way that we contribute to a blue economy is by employing community level coaches that come from the same low income and under-resourced communities that we work with the kids, to earn income and really have skills development and job experience and work experience in the conservation sector. And that has a direct impact on blue economy, because the nonprofit's money is going into supporting these community level conservationists and upskilling them and helping them possibly find other conservation work moving further down the line. Green economy and blue economy can also be something that every person can be part of. We have a lot of power in the decisions that we make with what we buy. As the consumer, our power is what we choose to spend our money on. So contributing to blue and green economy by buying sustainable products, and again, going back to that local sustainable fish, using your income and your money to make good choices that will support the longevity of our planet is a really key way to contribute to blue/green economy.
Fantastic. And with that in mind, there's a question from Mama D. She's asking, how do school kids volunteer to help you during school holidays? And I'd like to go a bit further with school kids to volunteer, but also how does the public get involved with I Am Water, and how can they support you as well?
There's many parts to that question. The school kids that we work with specifically on our workshops are organized through the schools. So we go during the school day. We take them out of school for 2 days, because what we teach them contributes to their syllabus that they are learning at school anyway. And they join us for those 2 days and then go back to school afterwards. We sometimes host weekend events. We'll have beach cleanups, but I think the best way for school kids to volunteer would be through other specifically beach cleanup focused organizations. And here in Cape Town, one really amazing organization doing beach cleanups is the Beach Co-op, and the Aquarium Foundation also runs trash bashes. And that's a really nice way for kids to get involved with ocean conservation on their weekends. How can people be involved and support I Am Water? We are a non-profit, so the biggest way that we can be supported is through donations, and that can be done through our website, iamwaterfoundation.org. We have a specific donations page, and we are grateful for any and all donations we get, whether they are super tiny or super big. All donations make a difference and are used very wisely. And it is a big ask to say donating is the best way to support us. So I do also need to add that even just telling people about I Am Water and maybe sharing our website, a link to our website within your sphere of influence, so that more people can hear about the work that the organization is doing is another really amazing way to help support us. Just spread the word. And even if it's not directly spreading the word about I Am Water, talking about ocean conservation is something that is always going to be helpful to us, because that's what we do. We work towards conserving the ocean and protecting the ocean. So the more people talking about that, the better. I think I covered all the points.
You sure have. And just a reminder, if you, as Catherine mentioned, if you want to help or support or volunteer or whatever it might be for I Am Water, go onto their website, iamwaterfoundation.org. Now, a question comes from Milo asking, what do I have to study to work with water?
In some cases, you don't actually need to study at all. I personally studied marine biology, and that helped me get into this field. But we have also got a lot of our coaches that are just really passionate about the ocean. They maybe come from a life-saving background or have volunteered with the National Sea Rescue Institute. And through their hands-on experience in and around the ocean through those different organizations, they have gained these incredible skills that help them to introduce kids to the ocean safely. So there are the more academic routes, which could be through marine biology, oceanography, a certificate or diploma in nature conservation. But then there's also the more hands-on approach of volunteering, being a volunteer lifeguard, volunteering for the National Sea Rescue Institute, or becoming a paid lifeguard. There are so many different routes that you could take that would eventually guide you towards a career or even just more time around the ocean and ocean conservation. I think it can be quite limiting to say that you need to study something to be a positive contribution to ocean conservation. So I would say volunteering is the next best bet. If you are not going to be able to study, or if studying is not something that interests you, volunteering for organizations and volunteering your time is a really great way to get a foot in the door in the ocean conservation sector.
Once again, I agree, especially when it comes to the likes of the National Sea Rescue Institute, NSRI. If you do live in any of the coastal regions, this is a wonderful organization to be a part of and to volunteer for. And if you do, and in many cases, you can do a lot of the courses required to be one of the rescuers within the institution itself, and that's a part and parcel of just volunteering. So from skippering boats to being rescuers, and sometimes even going as far as going into the diving and all the use of radios, etc., for being on the sea, all come included within that. And I think NSRI, being a massive institution in South Africa, and a big part in the rescues that go on, but it's not always rescues for humans, sometimes also for wildlife as well, as we see here in Port Alfred when we have penguins or turtles or whatever washing up on the beach. It's always the locals who are, calling in for anybody going to Port Elizabeth, where there's a big rescue warehouse there, and they then assist with getting the animals back to health and releasing them back into the ocean. So, and a big part and parcel of NSRI. But all of these kind of institutions, as you say, volunteering, I think, is the easiest way to get involved. And then, you haven't committed yourself as well, because you may find that you don't like certain aspects or whatever. And then you can move into the sides that you find yourself better adapted to, and then maybe study along those lines if that's the way that you want to go and you can afford to. Otherwise, just volunteering with those organizations are always going to open up doors. At the same time, you're helping with the conservation of the oceans and the rivers. So, a little bit cloudy and gloomy here, even though these Ellies still enjoying their time next to the waterhole. But I think time for us to change of place, and let's head back to Kamfersdam. Well, we've got some land visitors as well. Looks like a few wildebeest there, blue wildebeest, just chasing off the flamingos as they come down for a drink. A nice little herd of springbok, and it looks like our leucistic blessbok is back as well. Now, Hazel asking a nice question. What are your hopes for I Am Waters for the next year regarding water conservation?
One of our biggest goals for this year is to get more Oceans for All Alliance members trained up. So that's that Train the Trainer initiative I spoke about earlier on in the session, where different organizations from all over the world or all over South Africa come to I Am Water and learn how to implement our ocean connection methodology in their own local context. And we really want to grow that initiative this year. Our hope is to spread it to more global locations. Right now we only have one global initiative member, and we would love to see that grow and increase and just really start to become a big community of people doing ocean connection workshops. And then we can start to learn from one another and see maybe something that works really well in Argentina is something that we could implement here in South Africa as well. And yeah, just to start scaling in that way by sharing our information and the things that we've learned with other organizations hoping to do similar work to I Am Water. So that's our main hope this year, is to not only keep doing what we do. We do about 52 workshops a year with grade 7 learners, but also to start scaling to a more global level through the Oceans for All Alliance.
What a wonderful outlook, and I hope that you go from strength to strength. And of course, we've also had a lot of bad news around South Africa in terms of the health of our water, and what comes to mind immediately is the health of the likes of Hartbeespoort Dam, the Vaal River system, and all the water lettuce and water hyacinth really taking over and becoming a real scourge. And as a result of, I would say, crumbling infrastructure and the likes of, the local governments not being able to contain and treat the levels of sewage that's coming into them. And so it's most of it just going into the river systems. And with this high levels of organic matter, really raising the levels of nitrogen, etc. And then these nitrogen-loving plants are just taking over. So the guys, they've started releasing weevils to try and combat these plants, which eventually probably will, but it could take years to spraying of them. But then you always wonder what's going to happen to the quality of the water. You might get rid of the plants, but what's left of the sort of pesticides and the chemicals that come with that. So we're on a fight now to preserve our natural resources, and I think it all comes down to that crumbling infrastructure.
Absolutely, yeah. I think looking after all water resources on our planet is so important because it is the blue heartbeat of our planet. It's what keeps us all alive and healthy. We need to do everything we can to look after those places and those resources.
Yeah, and we've even had similar here at Kamfersdam, where there was, there's local communities living near to this little 400-hectare reserve, and there has been obviously some effluent flowing into this waterhole, so they are monitoring it, and at least in this system, they are, counteracting it, or at least keeping a close eye on it, specifically for the health of the animals that they're conserving here. So, we've got these pockets of conservation areas, but I think that just in general, the public needs to get involved and try and help wherever they can in their local community. So Nadia, just saying a big thank you to you, Catherine, for all of the work you and your team have been doing to create such an inspiration.
Thank you. It's very kind words. It's being able to share about the work that iAmWater does is really inspiring because it's sharing messages of hope, and there's a lot of stories coming out that make it a little bit less hopeful. There's our outlook on climate change and the future of our planet is often taking a knock with all of these updates and stories and things saying that the state of the planet is not where we need it to be. And I think it's really important to also share stories of hope that will help us refocus and kind of re-inspire us to do more and as much as we can. So thank you. Thank you for the appreciation.
Now, lovely comment coming in from Ant. He's saying, if we all took two, help a lot. I have to agree with you, Ant. I think any day when you go near to a water source, all right, so apparently there's just a little bit of breakup in my audio. So just to repeat that, there's a comment coming through from Ants saying if we all took 2 weeks out of the year and got on a boat and helped clean up some of the ocean trash, it would help a lot. I think it definitely would, Ants. And we could even say that any time you go near to a water source, being it fresh or ocean environment, marine, just take along a bag. Preferably a paper bag, otherwise we're adding to the plastic, and just get in whatever you can. Whatever you see, whatever's around, there always is plastic, whether it's a bottle top or a can or whatever it might be. Just chuck it in there and try and at least centralize this and get it into the sort of areas where it is not near our fresh or ocean environments.
To add to that, there's a really amazing initiative called Take 3 for the Sea, and it is as simple as that. It is anytime you're at the beach, picking up 3 pieces of rubbish or plastic that shouldn't be there. And that's the idea behind taking 3 things, is that it's an easier start to start forming habits and making that part of your day-to-day and just top of mind whenever you're at the beach. You take 3 for the sea. Obviously, to take more is even more helpful, but starting small is a great way to get into it.
And I think also just making habits and also taboos, we speak of how we can change things in society. When many years ago, when there was smoking allowed just about in every single spot you could go to, any public space, and slowly but surely that was changed into more of a taboo. And now people sort of have to hide around corners to go for a smoke. Well, we could do the same with plastic. If you see people throwing or chucking any kind of rubbish out, call them out on it and get them to throw that in the places that they should. So I think that's really important. Let's make a taboo out of polluting wherever it is, on the road or out in urban environments or rural. Let's try and change the habits of our own. With that being said, it's just about time to wrap up with Catherine. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board with us and sharing all of what you do at iAmWater. And we hope that you guys go from strength to strength.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks very much. That's Catherine from iAmWater. Godspeed. And now we're going to be heading back just to what we do best, and that is checking out the animals next to the waterhole. But what a wonderful discussion that was about iAmWater and what they do as we lead up to World Water Day, which is tomorrow, and getting everybody to think about the water. And so I think a wonderful initiative. I can't make up my mind whether that's a leucistic or a albino blessbok over on the left there. We've seen it before. I think to know for sure, we'd actually have to see the colors of the eyes, because it could be either. I'm tending to lean towards leucistic because it doesn't. There seems to be a little bit of color there, and obviously albino is when there's no pigment at all. So there would be no dark coloring in the eye, and there wouldn't be any dark sort of or underlying darker fur on that animal. That's why I'm thinking of leucistic, but I'm not 100% sure. It could well be an albino as well. So I would say blessbok have got quite similar horn shape to impala, albeit they're a little bit straighter. So they're almost in between springbok and impala horns, if you see what I mean. They're not quite as big and as rounded as the impala, but not as small, also as rounded at the tips as a springbok. So that's why I'm thinking somewhere in between. And you can see quite clearly now with this white fur on this pigment-challenged blessbok that just below the eyes you've got those preorbital glands, and now with the white fur you can actually see the secretion, the oily secretions down the face itself. Now, also just wanted to follow up on that question from Milo, who was asking, what do I have to study to work with as well. That's how I did, and then also as a fishing guide, both on the Vaal River and then also going up into the Zambezi and the Okavango. So those areas are also good areas for getting into as a nature guide and then being involved in those natural water systems. So Alden was asking, are leucistic animals healthy? So yes, Alden, well, a leucistic animal is just the same animal, but it's got a sort of genetic variation and a color variation. So it's just lacking in melanin. And albinism is when there's no melanin at all, so no pigment in the skin at all. Where leucism, there's very little. So it's just in terms of, it's like the color of your skin. So it just makes it that the lighter colored animals obviously do have more the sunlight has more of an effect on them, and it can have potential for issues, and some even getting a little bit of cancerous spots, with them being exposed to the very harsh African sun. So it's mainly around that they do have some issues, but in general, just as healthy as the next animal if they've got enough resources of food and water. And we've seen leucistic lions in the Kruger area as well, and they seem to do pretty well, but it is just a rare genetic variation in their color. So it's in the exact same animal. It's just that they've got less melanin in their and less pigmentation. So and that continues with Khaki Boss. He's asking, are leucistic animals at greater risk of skin cancer? Yes, they would be. Obviously, with less pigment and melanin in the skin, the harsh UV rays do have that potential and have a much bigger risk for the animals that don't have that protective melanin. I also think that sometimes they may be more susceptible to predation because they stand out. So, I don't have anything to prove this, but it would make sense that, an animal that's white will stand out more in these natural environments. So potentially having more threats from predation. So Mina saying white lions must be stunning. Yes, they are absolutely beautiful. And I've seen ones with blue eyes and then obviously the white coats. And a big male lion with that coloration and blue eyes, it's absolutely stunning. And it goes so far that a lot of the sort of private reserves have obtained those genes and they breed with them on their private reserves, not canned lions. So don't worry, I'm not supporting any of that. But, for instance, down in the Eastern Cape, there's a number of private game reserves that actually have white lions. And it is a big tourist attraction because of this. And a lot of the reason why a lot of these lodges are actually full because, the people coming to see these white lions. So it's not something that I would promote on a big scale, but for the likes of these conservation areas, if it's white lions that bring the people to these private reserves, all of them within the bounds of, the requirements of having, the size reserve required to have all these animals. But with that being the sort of flagship of the reserve, it does then allow the people with the economic input to be able to have the rest of the likes of elephants and giraffe and all the antelope, etc. So, you've always got to have a draw card to bring the people there. And a lot of the Eastern Cape reserves have used the likes of white lion to do just that. Right, so a nice stop in here with particularly this leucistic blesbok, joined by some blue wildebeest. But I think it's time to change of place and let's change of province entirely. Let's go to KwaZulu-Natal and Tembe Elephant Park. where it's living up to its name, and there's some elephants down by the water. Off in the background there looks to be, is that a warthog? Looks like it, just behind that termite mound. And another elephant scratching post. I'm sure the warthog will also use it to scratch on. Those lower areas, probably from them. Just nice and relaxed. It's quite overcast, so the sun not beating down on them. They are wafting their ears, though, quite regularly. So you would think that they are getting quite warm, but I think it's a little bit of a cooler day than average. Righties, so this time of the day you can always expect lots of elephants about, especially if it's nice and hot. So I think it's time, let's change of place and let's try Old Donyo again. It seems our giraffe have still just moved off onto the right there. They seem to have been bothered by something earlier. Not quite sure what. But once again, also no view of Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. Just too many clouds about, unfortunately. You can see the slope going up on the left-hand side, just above the tree line, and then disappears off into the clouds. And it seems like that's what we're doing as well. But now we can see a bit clearer this giraffe that's been about, getting irritated by those red-billed oxpeckers. And look at that, how could you not get irritated? Just while you're trying to chew your food and you've got a bird hanging on your chin. I think sometimes giraffes are actually able to sleep while they are ruminating. I've seen a lot of animals. Buffalo, I'm 100% sure that they can sleep while ruminating. I've seen bulls doing it in waterholes, lying, wallowing, ruminating at the same time, all the while fast asleep. All right, now, folks, I'd like to give you one of the little highlights that we had from Oldonyo, but for some people it wouldn't be a highlight. It's not for sensitive viewers, so if you are not averse to all things meaty and cruel with wildlife, then please don't watch now. But we're going to be heading on over to one of the very interesting sightings that we had at Oldonyo quite recently. Shame. Poor giraffe. I think he took the brunt of that elephant's aggression. Must be coming into must, or has had a bad day for whatever reasons. We can't tell. We don't know what's led up to that elephant and the activity of it coming up to this waterhole. But elephants, when they come into must, having extra 60 times levels of testosterone running through their blood. I've seen them pushing over trees just for the hell of it. This was one of those instances. I think that giraffe was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that elephant took out its aggression on it. And I don't see that giraffe lasting long. I think it's probably going to become lion food. Now, this begs the question, would we get involved and to help the giraffe? Well, in these instances, there's, the view that definitely not, because that giraffe, in the unfortunate circumstances that it got stabbed by an elephant, and as a result, some of its innards were obviously exposed. That is obviously going to fester. It's going to become infected. The giraffe is going to lose condition, and it's going to happen quite quickly. And if the giraffe doesn't die on its own, it will get taken out by lions. But eventually it's also going to lie down and most likely die. Not a very nice death, but it's then going to become a food for many, many animals here. So from the likes of jackals to caracal to lions, hyenas, etc. So if we get involved, we change the course of, history, and we're also changing the random nature of wildlife in the essence that those are the opportunities that a lot of these scavengers, I don't like to call them that, but opportunists more so, have the opportunity then to feed on that on that giraffe. And it goes across many different species. So one animal's unfortunate occurrence is another one's fortuitous occurrence. And so we shouldn't be changing that, because that was nature at its best and at its most cruel, but something that I believe we should not get involved with at all because of our emotions in wanting to save the giraffe. We've got to think about the animals that it's going to be feeding at the end of the day. What amazed me about that was just how easily penetrated the giraffe was. I sort of initially thought that it just lifted the elephant just lifted the giraffe up, but obviously when it ran away, we got a quick view on the damage. And unfortunately, that wasn't all that happened. It obviously pierced it just with a forward lunge, and just shows how powerful those elephants with their tusks can be to lift the weight of the giraffe at the same time as spearing it. And that's very much in contrast to what we've seen from the elephants. The bulls, very relaxed, very calm around the waterholes, and everyone been commenting on that. So yes, there is a darker side to them, especially when they get that increase in testosterone. And obviously, example number one. So, and another thing was that a lot of viewers were often asking why are the giraffes so nervous when there's elephants about, because they seem so calm and relaxed. And well, once again, Exhibit A, that's a good reason why the giraffe need to be nervous, not only for predators but even for the likes of elephant. So not any big animals about, apart from that Maasai giraffe, just ruminating, getting irritated by the red bull oxpeckers. But there are lots and lots of insects. They're moving too fast to be able to see exactly what they are. But it looks like there's all sorts of swallowtail butterflies. There's some brown-veined whites, I think. There's the odd yellow as well. I think there's a libellule, as they call in French, dragonfly. A very busy waterhole, from the tiniest little insects to the largest African mammals. Oh, hello, emerald spotted wood dove. We have a visitor. We would often use the likes of doves, and when we're tracking, to try and work out the time of when those tracks actually occurred. Because generally, it's not always, but generally doves will forage, and they're looking for little seeds and things especially on the roads, on the game paths, and they generally forage into the sun. So you can work out the direction of the dove movement, and if it's walked over the track. So if you see a reasonably fresh track, but you want to work out exactly when it was, you can sort of get a time scale of the dove tracks over the top of them, because and the direction that it was moving. Because if it was moving in an easterly direction, then and it went over the top of those tracks, well, then you could say that those tracks were early in the morning, or before the dove walked on it. So the doves walked on it early in the morning, so it was obviously preceding that. And then obviously the other way around as well. If it's walking into the west and it's walked over the tracks, well, then it could have been in the early morning, and it's then later on walked over the top of it. So a lovely sort of tool that we use in tracking are the tracks of doves, in terms of the direction that they usually forage in, normally moving into the sun. Sun's come out now, just showing this giraffe's beautiful coat and spot patterns. So Kira Monique was saying that I'm still shocked that the elephant attacked the giraffe like that. I thought they only attack when provoked. Kira, generally that assumption is correct. However, there's many instances of bull elephants being irrational because of that increase in testosterone that they get when they're coming into must. And it must be a truly enlightening experience, to say the least, for the elephant to be in that frame of mind, because it's just such a different level of emotions for that creature, and obviously aggression being at the top of it. It's frustrated as well. It's obviously, a lot of built-up angst. It wants to find females. It wants to fight with anybody that it sees. It's almost like a bodybuilder on steroids that goes to a bar and wants to go look for fights. That's exactly the way that I think of these bull elephants when they come into must. And they must feel exactly the same. So want to pick a fight with just about anything. And if it's not a giraffe, they'll do it with a tree. They'll just push a tree over just to get out that anger. So unfortunate for the giraffe, but part and parcel of the sort of natural cycles that go on with the elephants themselves. So nothing unusual in terms of the elephant's behavior in must, but might be unusual for people that aren't quite used to these occurrences in the wilderness. So Soul Shatter, PWI, was saying maybe he felt that the giraffe did not respect his dominance enough. Soul Shatter, potentially, but I just think that he was unlucky. As I say, wrong place, wrong time. He was just there, and as I say, it's the big guy walking into the pub, and you're the only one there. He's going to pick on you. So I think that's what happened here. It's a random occurrence, and randomness is a big part of nature, and evolution as well. So it's just unlucky for the giraffe. If he wasn't there at that time of the day, he probably would still be fine. But he just got unluckily in the way of that elephant. And this is often what we need to do as guides, especially when we go out on foot, on trails. You want to pick up that elephant is in must, as soon as possible. You don't want him coming towards you and realizing late that he is in must, because then you'll obviously have to take, the required response, which, generally doesn't end well. So avoidance of those big bulls, but not only on foot, but also on vehicle. When you can see that particular swagger that they have, and there's a particular way that they hold their ears as well, and it's just the way they walk, they look like they're looking for a fight, and you can see it when you've watched elephants for long enough. You can generally tell just by looking at their behavior and their body language that they mean business and they're looking for trouble. The obvious giveaway is the leaking from the penis, and so they're wet between their back legs. But sometimes they can be coming in to must, and they're not quite in full must yet. And so they're just starting to build up that anger, but not showing the signs completely. And so sometimes it can be hard to tell, and that's where I always rely on the body language of the elephant. I like to have a good time seeing an elephant potentially before approaching, to have a closer look, both on vehicle and on foot, to know whether he's in must or not. You need to know absolutely before making an approach. And obviously, if you find out at a late stage, you can end up being like that giraffe. So it's important for guides especially, but even for the general public, when you go out into the likes of the Kruger Park or Etosha National Park, wherever it might be, where you can take self-drive safaris, to try and work out with those bulls. And if they're nice and relaxed, tail swishing side to side, they're not sort of showing any kind of aggression. They don't have that swagger. They're holding and flapping their ears normally. Those are the ones that you can approach. But if they're not showing those signs, it's best just to keep a nice, clear escape route. Right, so this giraffe might finally get down for a drink. He's thinking about it. But now we understand why, a little bit more, why they take so much time to actually get down for a drink. You know, you can even think that very same giraffe might have had 100 drinks next to the same elephant, but each time maybe he was in a different disposition, different frame of mind, not coming into must. All of those probably just led up to this point, and he just got unlucky once again. And then we have to obviously go back to the very essence of why these animals come here, and that's the water. It's a point where animals are forced to come together, because if they didn't have to come and drink, that giraffe would still be fine, once again. But it's forced to come to this particular spot, and it's then the convergence of different species, but also different territorial animals within the same species. And so you find that water points are the source of many conflicts, because of this sort of central location that they're all forced to go to. And I'm almost certain that many animal species would never drink in their lives if they didn't have to, because of this very particular problem that they have. Coming to the water is a dangerous exercise. It is, however, required. They cannot survive without the water. So whether it's crocodiles or elephants or lions waiting for them, they've got to take their chances, because without the water they'll die anyway. So it's one of those real requirements that they have. And unfortunately, a center of many conflicts. Still just trying to make sure that the coast is clear. So Lenny was asking, have you seen anything like that happen in person, Ralph, with the giraffe and elephants? Not not particularly giraffe, Lenny. I've never seen an elephant injure a giraffe like that. That's a first for me. I've seen them chase them off, but I've never seen one actually get another one. The giraffe are generally so nervous that they don't hang about long enough. So that seemed to be an old bull, maybe also, just sort of lacking in the nervousness that a younger bull may have had. So that might have been part of the problem. He didn't move quick enough for the elephant, and so he made him move. But I've seen elephants do that to other elephants in person. 2 bulls fighting, and one bull piercing, another one in the side. Didn't kill it initially, did it again, and it was an almighty fight. It went on for hours. It wasn't very nice to watch. Eventually, the younger bull, who had now come up and was sort of taking on the dominant bull, was the aggressor, and was the one that eventually killed the dominant bull. So that's something often that happens in nature, but we don't often get to see it. I got to witness it firsthand. But yeah, I've also seen females doing similar with each other. It's sort of around the matriarchy. I didn't actually see the one in person. It was one of the desert elephant groupings that was actually saved after falling in a French drain at one of the lodges in the Ughab River. And it seemed like there was a power takeover when the herd left the matriarch, who was stuck in this French drain. And then, the locals all helped out, filled the hole underneath the elephant. Eventually, the elephant was able to get out, but it was exhausted. Went to go and rejoin the herd, and we followed the tracks the next day, and then they found that, the herd, when they had rejoined, the herd had obviously placed another matriarch in that female's place, and they were having none of it, so they killed her. So, it happens, and that's the ways of the wild, but sometimes difficult to watch. And we often find that they relax a little bit more when they're not alone, the giraffe, and when they've got other giraffe around. I think they just feel a little bit more relaxed because there's another alarm signal. It's kind of like when you go surfing out in the ocean alone. It's better when you've got a mate with you and you think your chances are halved of being eaten. So I think it's the same case here. So a giraffe can drink anything up to about 50 liters of water a day. So they do have a high water requirement, and that forces them to come here and put themselves in risky situations. And you would have to say that in general, most of the injuries and fatalities between species comes from themselves. It's generally bulls fighting with other bulls, and that goes for elephants and giraffe. So I've seen the most injuries in elephants coming from other elephants, and the most injuries in giraffe coming from other giraffe. So this isn't as normal, if you want to say, as what we saw with the elephant accosting that giraffe. But it's nothing totally, it does happen, but it's not as frequent as intra species, competition and vying for dominance and for mating rights, etc. So there's a much bigger mortality rate actually between species, inside the species rather than outside. But it does happen, as we saw there. And I'm pretty sure that giraffe won't survive that ordeal with exposed organs. So he's generally probably going to become food. But although it's sad for the giraffe, as I said previously, that will create amazing food source for all sorts of animals, from the predators right down to the decomposers. There will be vultures that will come in and feed there as well. How many different species of vultures would we see down next to that giraffe carcass? It will most likely be incredible. So it creates a feeding hotspot, and sometimes quite amazing to watch. But it all stems from a very unfortunate occurrence. Well, looks like they've got their water intake, and looks like they're moving off. Okay, now that these giraffe have moved off, I think we'll do the same. Let's go back to Tembe Elephant Park. Where we've got all the elephants. And it looks like they're having a bit of a wrestling match all round. So, and this obviously is what I'm sort of attesting to. The elephants fight with each other a lot. The bulls, mostly. It can happen with the females as well, but it's not as common as with the males. They're always fighting, whether it be for play or just, testing their muscles and getting that muscle memory for when it's really required, to when it is really required and there's fighting for dominance and for mating rights. Looks like it might be getting quite heated there. The ones in the back. See, there's one bull in the middle here. He's got notches out both sides. It almost looks like he's had some earrings pulled out. And so, unfortunately, we're heading slowly towards the end of the show. I hope you've all enjoyed the discussions, especially around water. We're heading up to World Water Day tomorrow and discussing I Am Water, the organization. That was nice having Catherine Wallace with us. And then obviously moving on to the discussions with that unfortunate occurrence with the elephant and the giraffe at Old Borneo. But that is the ways of the wild. We might not always understand it or agree with it, but that's not for us to decide. It is the ways of the wild. And as we see these boys being boys, and what's happened to this this boy here in the foreground's earlobes. I wonder what landed up him getting those notches ripped out. Who knows? But with that being said, we have to say thanks to everybody for watching. We hope to have you again once more on Live at the Waterhole. Don't forget that after this there will be the sunset safari, so the naturalists all out and about seeing what they can find. So don't go anywhere. Lots of action coming your way. Thanks to the WildEarth team. You guys rock. Without them, none of this would be possible. And of course, you, the viewers, for joining us as per usual. Always a pleasure. And all we can do is wonder what's going to happen next. You never can tell with wildlife. Expect the unexpected, and the only constant is change. So that's it from me for now, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Salagatle, bush greetings. Cheers.
Well, a very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for joining us once again on our highlight